Everything needs to change so that everything can stay the same. That's the wisdom of Tancredi from The Leopard, Il Gattopardo, by Lampedusa. I'm talking about it because I've got Sicilian wine and it's set in Sicily. But also it feels sort of apt. Everything needs to change so everything can stay the same. As we emerge, blinking into the sort of post-lockdown world, sort of, slowly. Not in Bernard Castle, which I am now always going to pronounce like an American. That's my friend Boris does that. Hello, Boris, if you're watching. But just to irritate people, to confuse people, always call it Bernard Castle. And then just see if... it's a bit like how you should always order a cappuccino and then watch baristas sort of wonder whether they should correct you or not. So, yeah, I'd like a cappuccino, please. We are with Jeroboams today. We're going to start straight away because we've got Sicilian wine. We're going to go do a sort of southern Italian tour. And oh my goodness, I love Sicily. We haven't really had very many wines. What this is called? This is called Bianco d'Aetna from Terra Costantino. And it is £20.95. But this is fine wine from Sicily. And you know what you should do with it? You should go and get a glass of this and buy yourself a copy of Il Gattopardo. It's this story about a kind of a prince, and it's all set during Garibaldi, who's in his sort of red shirts. They're coming through and they're liberating, or they're unifying Italy. And Tancredi's this young guy, and he falls in love. And if you don't, I tell you what, if you don't want to read the book, which is magical, and you should read it, but ideally you want to read it in Sicily, this sort of sultry day. Watch the film, which was made by Luigi Visconti? No, Luchino Visconti. And I'll tell you a thing about him, because I read about him once. He smoked 120 fags a day, and then died of a stroke. But there's him. Burt Lancaster is in it. He plays the prince, I think. Alain Delon, who looks a lot like me, I have to say. A very handsome man. He plays Tancredi. Sorry, I'm banging on here. And then, who's the amazingly beautiful actress? Claudia Cardinale. That's it. Go and have a look. Right, what's this like? Gracie. Oh, that is zingy and zesty and racy. Wow. Right, we are hardly surprised because this is made from a great variety called Caricanti. Let me tell you something about Caricanti. Just a minute, wait there. Here we go. I looked up Caricanti in this, which is Oz Clarke, Margaret Rand, Grapes and Wines. It's not in there. Now, this isn't a totally recent copy. When did I get this? This is from 2008. Doesn't mention Caricanti. And yet, Caricanti is today producing £21 fine wine from the slopes of Mount Etna. The Mount Etna wine region is right up, it's quite high up, which is why big diurnal temperature difference. So it goes up very high in the day and down very low at night. And that retains that keen acidity, that freshness. So although it's really warm down there, it's also on volcanic soils, although there's a mix. So there's a lot of wine knowledge in this one because, well, I'll tell you in a minute, there are 12 soil orders in the world, and I think 8 of them exist on Mount Etna. But the volcanic soils give the wines a real zesty vim and vigour as well. Caricanti has this quite high natural acidity about it. But yeah, it's in a sort of crescent shape around the slopes of the mountain. And it's been making not very good wine for quite a long time. And yet now we've discovered it is for wine people, it's a bit like the Bulgari of Sicily. Somebody described it that way. They said it's a bit like when you go to Tuscany and they came out of Chianti Classico and went to Bulgari where they made super Tuscans. You kind of get super Sicilians now, effectively are grown on the slopes of Mount Etna. Although it is much older than Bulgari. Seafood. Oh, God, it'd be really good with seafood. You get amazing seafood. You go out to Catania and places. Syracuse. To go and get really nice seafood. And it has that sort of lemon zest. But I tell you what it's also got. It's got apple-y freshness to it, which is interesting because sometimes Caricanti can be so fresh and zesty that you have to soften the acidity. And you do a thing, which I always promised I would never talk about on one of these, called a malolactic conversion. It's not actually a fermentation, it's a bacterial conversion. And it turns the acid from malus, from the Latin for an apple, malic acid, aptly, into lactic acid, which is from the Latin for milk. So it's a bit of a Latin lesson there as well. So it goes from apple to milk. Milk has a softer acidity than, but this hasn't. It's still got that fresh, sort of Granny Smith crunch to it. It's really delicious. So you're going to be able to get this. I'm going to have a look down here. These are all from Jeroboams, 8 shops in London. We'll come back to them in a little minute. There's £20.95. It's got a whiff of wood smoke. That's absolutely true. And it's elegant. It's very fine wine. Show this to somebody who really likes Pouligny Montrachet. Tell you who else really enjoyed Sicily, Goethe, the German dude. And he said something along the lines, I won't do it in the original German, but he said something along the lines that if you want to understand the whole of Italy, you sort of need to go to Sicily. Or the key to understanding Italy is to go and explore Sicily. And it's very true. Sicily sort of has all these Italian stereotypes, but really concentrated. And I've been 2 or 3 times, and it's a fantastic place, but never been to Etna. I've been on the other side, Palermo side, where a lot of the Prince happens. You go to places like Corleone. Absolutely. And in fact, Goethe enjoyed it so much, famously, I don't know whether he persuaded, but he went back to Germany, and a number of German winemakers went and started growing grapes on the slopes of Mount Etna. I think because it was a little bit like growing them on the slate of the Mosel and the steep hills in the Rhineland. So you got these German winemakers in the 19th century. It went back. There you go. Excuse me. So what we're going to go into? Well, we've got wines today from Jeroboams. Jeroboams have been around since the 80s, I think, but it incorporates a company called Layton's, who've been around for much longer, who do their on-trade bit. We need to support these merchants because although they've got 8 great shops in London, and you can buy online, so go and visit Jeroboams. I'm not going to say, just look up Jeroboams online. I can't remember if it's a com or a co.uk, but the on-trade business is completely flat, so they're not being able to sell anything to Great London restaurants, which is where you'd often find these wines. So bring that fine dining experience into your own home. It's the best way to go and do it. You can go and visit Jeroboams. Right, next wine. Senete, Falanghina, Janare, Sannio, DOP, La Guardiense, Campania. £13.95. Lots of people ask me, how do I read wine labels? Well, this is a really, really good one. So we're not on Sicily anymore. What we've done is we've gone into Campania, and this is a wine that the last vintage of this won Trebicchieri. It won the top sort of ranking in the Italian wine guide, Gambero Rosso, which means the red prawn, and Trebicchieri means 3 glasses. And it is utterly gorgeous. So it's from Campania, so you go inland from sort of Naples. Now, with this, so now I'm going to have to go and get this right. Senete Falanghina is the sort of brand name. So Senete is the brand name, Falanghina is the grape variety. Janare is a particular group of wines made by the La Guardiense cooperative. Sometimes people are sniffy about cooperatives. These guys are really good. They and particularly this range, the Janare range. Sannio is the area that it comes from. So it's part of Campania. So Campania's that bit that's on the sort of top of the foot of Italy, if you like, towards the toe. And there's a smaller area called Sannio, which is interesting. Now, we'll talk about Sannio in a minute. Chamomile. This is richer, warmer. Still, this is much more citrus. So this is sort of lemon lime, even a kind of grapefruit tang to it. Perfect with seafood. Glorious, juicy wine. This is more opulent. It's fuller. It's also £13.95. It's a bit more, if you like, sort of easy to sort of get into. Now, Falanghina, also known as Falanghina Greco, was famously the grape variety for a wine called Falernian, which was one of the most prized wines in ancient Rome. I think Pliny the Elder used to talk about Falernian. We'll probably mention Falernian on this before. And it was reckoned to be really good because you could keep it. I would not keep this for a long time. There's some people who used to talk about Falernian being sort of aged. Is it Trimalchio's Feast they had Falernian? And it was of a really old vintage. Anyway, this one, you don't want to keep it for a very long time. It's absolutely glorious. And interestingly, it comes from Sannio, and there are a group of people called Samnites and that's where the name comes from. It comes from Samnites, and they famously sided with Pyrrhus, who had the Pyrrhic victory. So they would occasionally rise up against the Roman Empire. And there are a couple of quite famous Samnites. One of them is Pontius Pilate. He was a Samnite. And the other was Cassius. He's sort of very much involved in the killing of great people. Cassius, who stabbed Caesar, et tu Brute. So Cassius was also an Epicurean, but a philosophical Epicurean. So it wasn't just about eating lots. It was about this. I'm not going to go and try and define Epicureanism, but it's to do with what is good. I think it's what is good is what brings the greatest pleasure, I think. But Epicureanism isn't about eating too much, because if you get drunk, then you have a hangover. That's not Epicureanism. I think it's something to do with that. But this also works out with democracies and whatnot. Anyway, Cassius was a Samnite. Today, here's the thing you need to go and do. With me talking about labels and banging on and being hopeless, go to to our blog and have a look. We've got a blog up today about, on our education hub, about WSET initiatives. There's a whole host of them, and I think I've not been trusted with telling you them myself, but I know there's one for Australian sommeliers, there's one on spirits, there's one on being able to do your WSET courses online with exams, so you can still do them in lockdown. There are some initiatives around wellness and so on for people in the trade. You don't have to be in the trade. There's one on Irish whiskey. So go and have a look. So go to wineshow.com and get onto the blogs and have a look and read up all about the WSET, and then probe around in our education hub. We're going to do a WSET special actually coming up soon. Look out for it. Somebody also mentioned the other day about my shirt, and I wasn't wearing a check one. Well, sometimes allowed a mufti day. Today's a mufti day, so I've come in mufti. What does mufti come from? A mufti is a Islamic scholar. I am not an Islamic scholar, but it was because in India, the troops, the British Empire, would dress in the sort of soft flowing robes, particularly if they're in smoking jackets. People said they looked like the muftis of who are Islamic scholars. That's where we get the word mufti from. Move along, Joe. Move along. Little tip: if you are going to go and watch the the Leopard, Il Gattopardo, the original Lucchino Visconti version, look for the long one with the long scene, because there's a massive 20th Century Fox cut a lot out of the ballroom scene and it ruins it. You have to go and find the original version of Visconti. Film buffs will all be nodding there. Salice Salentino 2012. This is a Riserva from Cantine Paolo Leo. We have some pictures of the family Paolo Leo here. There are various generations. There's Paolo is, I think, the dad with his wife, and then I think there's Nicola, who is his son, but there's lots of them. 1095. Oh, it's great, this. Dark, rich, plums, sweet fruit, but when I try it, bone dry palate, but it's ripe. And damsons. Have you ever had like damson crumble? It's the fruit in a damson crumble. Oh, it's so good. And mostly made from Negro Amaro, which means the bitter black one, or the black bitter one, Negro Amaro. And it has that sort of slightly bitter bite. And this comes from Brindisi, which is in Taranta. And I looked up, because I wondered, is there a connection between Taranta and Tarantino? And there is. It turns out that Tarantino is the language of the people of Taranta. And you know where the second, or the biggest sort of expatriate population of people who speak Tarantino is? California. So Quentin is a Tarantino, and that's where he gets his name from. Obscure factoids there. Oh, that is so good. It's still elegant. You know, sometimes you worry these wines that are going to be from the south. So this is across on the sort of Pulian side. So this is on the inside of the arch of the Italian foot, if you like, and sort of back at the heel bit of the arch of the foot, the top of the stiletto. It is elegant because it's from higher up. It maintains that freshness. Powerful, but still fresh. Juicy. Right, I'm not going to do questions, partly because we had a really long Q&A on Instagram Live at the weekend, but we will come back with more questions on Friday. Get yourself across to the WSET education hub on our website. Go and have a look. Do yourself some courses. Look after yourself. Stay safe. Don't drink too much. I am aware we've been in lockdown for quite a long time, and the temptation is, remember, I'm giving this stuff away, so I'm not drinking it all at home. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made it this far through the series. And we will be back on Friday with some interesting wines from Eastern Europe. Really interesting wines from Eastern Europe, so I'm looking forward to that. I'll see you then.